Hello, I'm Jeff Cole. I run the Center for the Digital Future at the USC Annenberg School, and I really enjoy the opportunity, we've done this in the past, to talk about what we think are some really important topics on the technological and social scene today. So I'm interested in disruption. I'm interested in change that frequently comes from nowhere, changes everything, turns business models upside down, and we find new ways of doing things that frequently have all kinds of expected and unexpected consequences. What I want to talk about today is what I think, along with AI, which of course everyone's talking about, I want to talk about a disruption that I think is going to be one of the most important economic and social disruptions of the next 100 years. And that's the weight loss drugs that we have seen take over the market. If we had thought 25, 30 years ago that there was a pill you could take once a day that would cause you to lose significant amounts of weight, we would think it's a miracle. Well, I'm not a shill for these new drugs, but these drugs are even better. It's not once a day, it's once a week. We're talking about drugs such as Ozempic and Wegovy from Novo Nordisk. We're talking about Mounjaro from Lilly and all kinds of new drugs. The remarkable thing about these drugs is they work. The people who take them, they were intended for people who were diabetic, but discovered that the weight loss came along with the treatment for diabetes. And now there are diabetic versions and non-diabetic flavors. But these drugs work. People lose 15 to 20% of their body weight. In addition to losing weight, which makes you healthier, it also reduces the risk of heart attacks and strokes, seems to play a major role in dealing with kidney disease and fatty liver disease. And astonishingly, these drugs even seem to play an important role, we're just beginning to understand, in dealing with alcoholism, drug addiction, and gambling addiction, because they deal with impulse control. And now, just in the last 2 weeks, seem to be important impact on sleep apnea. Now, some of these remarkable effects are just come from losing weight. Sleep apnea is weight related, and I'm not sure these drugs directly deal with sleep apnea. They just may make the body thinner, which deals with sleep apnea. But these are really remarkable results. The price, we'll talk about the economic price in a minute. The price that patients pay so far are fairly minor side effects: nausea, constipation, or diarrhea, not at the same time, thankfully. There has not so far, and these drugs have been on the market in one form or another for close to 10 years. So far, there seem to be no long-term negative effects. What some people don't like about these drugs, and this is an interesting phenomenon, is to continue, as in any diet, where frequently you can lose weight, but when you stop being on the diet, people more often than not, about 85%, not only regain the weight, regain additional weight. These drugs you may have to be on for the rest of your life. Now, it's not dangerous if you go off of them. If you lose 35 pounds or 20 kilo or 18 kilo, if you go off of them, there's nothing terrible is going to happen to you health-wise, but you may regain the weight unless you've been able to build the self-control that can keep you off of them, can keep you to stop eating without the drugs. But even if you have to be on them the rest of your life, there's one negative consequence of that, and that's the cost of the drugs. But even if you have to be on them the rest of your life, that's true of cholesterol drugs, blood pressure drugs. Many people take medications they have to take the rest of their lives. So this is a phenomenon that really does seem to be working. because obesity in America, 69% of Americans are overweight. Half of those are obese. As I travel, I used to spend time in the UK and Australia, and I would frequently say, for example, to British audiences, I try to be amusing about it, but I'd say, you Brits, you're getting fat. And of course, they would get upset, as they should. And then I would stop and say, but remember, we in America have set a very high bar, but you seem determined to match us. The good life, whether in Scandinavia, whether in Western Europe, Australia, New Zealand, even China now, obesity is on the rise. So the real disruption here, first, is that beyond the ability for people to live much longer lives, and we rarely see people who are seriously overweight celebrate their 90th birthday. Not only may people live longer, but also may live better, more active. But we do know, beyond the vast numbers of people who are affected by obesity, the economic cost on society is enormous. With 69% of Americans overweight and half of them obese, currently the healthcare system is spending about $200 billion a year treating obesity-related diseases. And considering that the population is aging, those numbers are only going to go up. Without something that can effectively deal with obesity, our healthcare systems around the world may go bankrupt. So these drugs, if readily available, and that's an important issue we'll talk about in a moment, may truly not only make lives longer and better, but may have massive positive economic consequences that may diminish significantly the cost of healthcare. Right now, that $200 billion is about 9% of all healthcare costs in America. The problem with being readily available is at the moment, these drugs are expensive. The biggest, best-known manufacturer is Novo Nordisk, based in Denmark. They are now the biggest company in Europe, which is quite remarkable. They are bigger than the entire Danish economy. And one of the reasons they have gotten so big is that for Americans, that the cost of these drugs monthly is $900 to $1,300 a month. Scientists at MIT have estimated that what they're selling for $1,300 a month could be manufactured profitably for about $5 a month. Now, looking at the $900 to $1,300, Americans are used to getting screwed on pharmaceutical prices. The same drugs in the UK are about $200 a month, in Canada about $150 a month, and in the US, the healthcare system, our equivalent of the National Health Service, Medicare, although Medicare is only for people 65 and older, will only pay for these drugs if someone is diabetic or is morbidly obese or has an obesity condition that's life-threatening. That standard's beginning to be relaxed a little bit. So we may see this positive economic consequence of diminishing healthcare costs significantly, but at the same time replaced with massive drain on healthcare systems, on wealthy individuals who can afford it. So clearly, for these drugs to be the potential miracle drugs that not only have massive economic benefits, but social benefits as well, the costs have to come down. They're not at the moment. Looking at the US and the $900 to $1,300, we are seeing competition. It's now Lilly in addition to Novo Nordisk and other drugs being developed. We are seeing some of the patents slowly will be expiring and the costs will come down, but that's a 5 to 7 year process. We're seeing what's known as compounded versions, where they're put together not from the manufacturer by others. Those may be in the US about $200, but we're not sure those are safe. But if we are able to see these drugs, and I think we will within 5 years, affordable at the cost of a cholesterol, a statin, or a blood pressure medication, which in the US is about $30 to $40 a month. If they're able to get to that point, they will achieve their potential of improving the quality of life and diminishing healthcare costs. And this is significantly improving. Because let's look at the social impact for a moment. The first thing that's really interesting is because in America, our favorite new game show is to watch people on television and guess who's on Ozempic. And when we see people we know who have suddenly lost weight, and whether they did it the other way or this way, but they're treated as if they're on Ozempic, and we consider people who are on Ozempic and those in weight loss drugs as cheating. And this is fascinating because we're saying you're cheating. You should be doing it the hard way, the traditional hard way, which is exercise and eating less. But we know that that way almost never works for anyone except in the short term on a diet, frequently a fad diet where you can only eat carbs, you can only eat protein or some other variation. And we know those diets don't work. So are people cheating if they're doing the one thing that may work? That's a fascinating social phenomenon. I think some of that comes, at least in America, from the fact that the people we know are on these drugs are movie stars, are celebrities. Oprah, who has been a board member of Weight Watchers, the old hard way of losing drugs, never seemed to be able to keep the weight off and suddenly was thin and had to admit, almost confess, that she was using these drugs and had to get off the board of Weight Watchers. So it's odd that we consider these people cheating, since we know that other ways, even for Oprah, didn't work. About a month ago, Barbara Streisand was on the web and saw a picture of Melissa McCarthy, who was looking very thin, and sent her a note. I think she thought the note was private. Turned out it went all over the internet, simply saying, "Are you on Ozempic?" The internet crashed down on her as if she had violated some horrendous rule and was so inappropriate, which is also surprising because if we have a friend we haven't seen in a few months and we see them and suddenly they look a lot thinner, the first thing we ask them is, "How did you lose the weight?" So there's all kinds of etiquette and rules and whether people admit because others think it's cheating. But we also know the consequences economically beyond just reduction in healthcare costs and the potential burden of the drug cost. It's beginning to affect other industries. At New York's Sugar Week, and yes, that's a thing, 2 months ago, Walmart reported that enough people are using these drugs that sales of certain foods are declining. Sweets, that people seem to lose interest in sweets and other kind of immediate gratification foods. We know the food market, the restaurant market is going to be affected. Nestle, the biggest food company in the world, has now introduced a line of food called Vital Pursuit for people who are on these glutide or weight loss drugs that give them protein and focus on the kinds of things people want to eat. The entire food and restaurant business is changing. The movie theater business may change because, at least in America, but it's true in most of the world, theaters get most of their revenue from concessions. And those concessions are almost never good, healthy food. They're impulse food. They're canned candy and all kinds of things filled with sweets. If those go down, movie theaters may not survive. We're seeing other changes. I think there's going to be a tremendous change in plastic surgery. First of all, morbidly obese people who lose a lot of weight sometimes have to have their skin tucked in, but that's going to be a minority. But a lot of people having lost weight are going to want to then do the rest of their bodies and have their noses or their faces or their breasts fixed so they can be, quote, even better. We know that therapy may be affected because, particularly in a marriage, there has been a noticing of a tendency having to do with these drugs. Just when one partner loses weight, sometimes it makes the marriage better. They encourage the other partner, but frequently that person can be reckless as they suddenly become a bit more attractive to other people for the first time, maybe in years. We know the travel business will change as people have lose weight and buy, and also I should have mentioned the fashion industry. People will want to get out of their sweatpants, buy new clothes, spend more time and energy on themselves, get out of the house, travel. The number of businesses that are going to be affected in some way, ultimately, together with healthcare, is going to be in the trillions of dollars. So the desire 25 years ago was to take a pill and lose weight. We're pretty much there, and it seems to be working. The only thing that really stops this from transforming society would be a long-term health effect that's intolerable. So far, we don't see that. Or if the prices of the drugs never come down to earth. But with safe drugs that are affordable to almost everybody, they need them, the economic and social transformation is going to be massive. And we're just beginning to understand which activities and which businesses will be affected.